Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on what next for quality of pharmaceuticals. I'm speaking from the perspective of the US market, the US FDA review and inspection, and some of the challenges that we have faced before the 2020 lockdowns and what challenges we are likely to face going forward, particularly in the context of not only the disruptions and the changes in the inspectional approaches, as well as the significant erosion of trust in institutions and scientific experts, as well as I think the geopolitical tensions, as well as the supply chain disruptions that are just now beginning. So the worst is not yet over. And these are difficult times, and I want to wish you peace, safety, and security for all of your efforts. I think as professionals, as well as in your family and your societal life. I hope you would be safe and you would be focused on doing the right, being good in these difficult times. Over the past 7+ years, my attention and practice has been on helping companies, small and large, build uh, a more effective pharmaceutical quality management system, as well as achieve quality by design and improve culture of pharmaceutical quality. The topics I will cover in my talk today are wide-ranging and obviously at a high level. So if you're interested in looking at the related publications that relate to the topics I'm covering, please send me an email, ijazshussainphd@gmail.com. The regulatory and industry efforts to improve not only the assurance of quality, control of quality, but also to improve efficiency and minimize drug shortages have been ongoing for last 20+ years. We are familiar with 21st Century Quality Initiative at FDA, the process analytical technology effort, the process validation changes to taking a life cycle approach to process validation and continued process verification, and obviously the ICH guidelines going from the ICH Q8, Q9, Q10, which is pharmaceutical quality system, a model, a life cycle approach model to pharmaceutical quality system for APIs, and also for continual improvement through more efficient change management. And one new focus is on continuous pharmaceutical manufacturing. And over the years, these efforts have struggled to progress as the way they were envisioned to progress. And we had several challenges from consent decrees, warning letters, import alerts, breaches in assurance of data integrity, which had to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. And we are generally familiar with the perspective of the Department of Justice on CGMP, especially in False Claims Act and breaches in assurance of data integrity, and their focus on developing people and making sure you have the right culture of quality. Similarly, at FDA, I think in 2015, after the major challenges, FDA reorganized itself to achieve one quality voice in its Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, and they continued their efforts to build bridges to Office of Regulatory Affairs, which is responsible for the inspectional aspects, CGMP inspections, and to build bridges aligned vertically as well as horizontally across programs, and ConOps and a compliance program 7356.002, which was executed starting 2017 October, where I think the efforts we are generally familiar before the COVID-19 pandemic. What about now? What comes next? Over the years, foreign inspections have kept increasing, and you see a downward trend in domestic inspection. Um, with respect to drug products, about 47% of manufacturing facilities that supply to US are are based in US, and the number is much smaller for APIs, where only 28% is manufactured. Facilities are there in the US which serve the US market. Now, the number of facilities is not necessarily a good indicator, because I think volume of product, I think, is a key. Most, over 95% of the prescriptions filled in the US market are generics, and a majority of the generics are imported, mainly from India, and APIs from China. And therefore, I think where we are today, and how do we progress next with respect to potential disruptions, virtual inspections, and geopolitical tensions, I think is an important consideration to keep in mind. My experience at FDA date back to the launch of the 21st Century Initiative, which I want to share with you today. And there are challenges in achieving integrated systems thinking within FDA. There are tough battles. We have negative vocabulary, and collaboration is difficult. Before the 21st Century Initiative, before ICHQ8, pharmaceutical development information was kept at site, was not part of the CMC review. And ICHQ8 and Quality by Design was intended to fill that gap, so that reviewers and inspectors have a common understanding of what is critical, what is not critical, so that they can be more science-based, to be risk-based in their decision making. And clearly, I think improvement post-approval is a change, and the need to minimize the prior approval supplement is one of the key consideration, which was intended when PAT initiative was launched, and that would have been expected to be covered under ICHQ 10. It was not, and ICHQ 12 is trying to fill that gap now. And clearly, I think we wanted to promote reduce regulatory fear and promote continual learning and continual improvement. And that still remains the key objective of FDA, to achieve an efficient manufacturing process without the type of oversight we need currently because of uncertainty, and to allow companies to really progress continual improvement programs on their own within their quality system. So that remains an important consideration. So in 2015, Office of Pharmaceutical Quality was established, which replaced Office of Pharmaceutical Science, and then came the concept of operations to align between review and inspection functions. And I think the concept of operations seeks alignment, vertical alignment, as well as horizontal alignment across programs and projects, and is sought to, it seeks to improve concurrence between what is high risk and when a warning letter should be issued. And since the establishment of OPQ in 2015, I think the concept of ConOps has been informally implemented, and only in 2017 it was formally implemented. And you can see the concurrence on when a warning letter should be issued has improved between the review and inspection functions. Many challenges remain, and one of those challenges is effective use of prior knowledge, and also correcting some of the misconceptions and wrong assumptions that we have in the system, and therefore we call it a new prior knowledge is needed to overcome the challenge, in particular, that 50% of approved ANDAs are not marketed, or marketed sporadically, or marketed only after significant delay. And 10% of NDAs without patents don't have an ANDA because either they're too complex, or they're not cost effective, not profitable for the industry. So these challenges indicate that the generic system is functioning at about 50% efficiency, and this needs to be improved. Risk is the product of consequence times the probability of its occurrence. Without knowing the probability of an occurrence, we can't truly claim to be science-based. To achieve quantitative quality risk assessment, we need to achieve statistical process control. A process that is in state of control can be improved. Corrective actions and preventive actions are not continual improvement. The challenge we face is we have not fully transitioned from a univariate way of thinking about quality to multivariate quality risk management. Pharmaceutical quality is multivariate. Many factors affect the quality of a product. And multivariate quality risk assessment was a focus of the PAT guideline. And that is a move towards a systems approach to corrective action and preventive actions. We still have a large percentage, over 90% of OS investigations are invalidated, root cause unknown, and an analyst or the operator is blamed, retrained, and the cycle continues. So we are trapped in a OS univariate cause unknown cycle, and we need to get out of that cycle to achieve statistical process control, and so that we can begin continued improvement. And that's an important consideration for a maturity of a quality management system. Let me share with you an example. An example of metoprolol succinate, which relates to the research that went into development of the SUPAC modified release guidance, which I was involved with. I also was deeply involved with the review in 2005, 4 and 5, when applications had started coming in for metoprolol succinate. Metoprolol succinate is a complex coated bead product. It's a tedious manufacturing process, but it exhibits a lot of failures and out of specification results. The situation I want to share with you first is in 2014, FDA concluded, after doing testing in their laboratories and doing even biostudies for 2 products from India, for 2 Indian companies, major Indian companies, which had underwent significant challenges with respect to GMP deviations, OS investigations not being effective, including breaches in assurance of data integrity. And FDA concluded, after doing the testing and biostudies in 2014, the answer was recalls with the result of the company's own test. I want you to think about that, because it's very easy to brush aside that statement, but that statement has very deep meaning. And I wish you to think about that, and so that you can appreciate the challenges which are actually hidden in plain sight. I wish you to reflect on the statement from the previous slide. Recalls were the result of the company's own test by the FDA spokesperson in 2014. In 2017, I was engaged by another Indian company to help them respond to a massive complete response letter, which essentially insisted that the scale-up factor of 10x is not applicable, but also that the FDA recommended that the company set an in-process drug release acceptance criteria for the final coated pellet, which should be the same as the QC test, compendial test for the product. Now, think about that. Do you see a dichotomy between the statement by FDA spokesperson in 2014 and FDA insisting that the dissolution test for the end product also be used as in-process test? Do you see a tension in that aspect? Please think about that. We'll come back to that in a minute. At the first FDA Science Board discussion on PAT on 16th of November 2001, we were presented, meaning FDA, were presented with data on similar products, coated bead products, where dissolution failures were now, for the brand companies, were very significant. And in this particular case, you will have, I'm not, by design, not getting the details here. The mean cycle time for production cycle time was 95 days, and the standard deviation around the cycle time was over 100 days. So when the standard deviation of a attribute is greater than the mean value, that is a hint of chaotic system unpredictability. And dissolution failures and inability to get to the root cause was the major challenge in those case examples. And at the second FDA Science Board discussion on PAT, Dr. Woodcock herself presented on 9th of April 2002. One of the dilemmas is that the compendial specifications, monographs test are intended to be market standards, but are used as quality control test by tradition, by historical tradition. And but there is a challenge there, and that is the type 2 errors that we see in each of those tests are intended for what is appropriate in a market situation, where we don't have to make a decision on the batch, but just make a decision on the consignment a pharmacy would receive. That's a historical view of that. And using those compendial tests for batch release guarantees that you would not be right first time, because the inherent variability, not only in the acceptance criteria, the way acceptance criteria is designed with zero tolerance, but also in particular on the calibrator tablet, which tends to be highly variable also. So although we responded to that with ASTM standard and FDA guidance on a very stringent mechanical calibrator, but that doesn't take care of the type 2 errors. One of the challenges we see with the COVID testing is false positives and false negatives. Essentially, that's the same challenge with, in particular, which is more prominent for physical attributes such as for particle size and so on and so forth, which is a blind spot within the sector. Measurement uncertainty, proper calibration, gauge repeatability and reproducibility are key to ensuring your analytical methods are in a state of control. If your analytical methods are not in a state of control, you cannot assess whether your process is in a state of control or not easily, unless you take multiple samples at the same sampling point, which is often difficult. So as the 2011 process validation guideline came about, the Office of Compliance staff, if you go back and look at the presentations, kept reminding that compendial tests were intended for market standards, and simply meeting compendial specification doesn't tell you that batch is okay. And ASTM standards were issued to interpret correctly the likelihood of meeting specifications and so forth. So the need for an alternate wording and alternate ways of doing quality control test was apparent, but because of the long history of using compendial test, we tend to not know how to get over that hurdle, and that is a significant gap that remains. So the consequence of that gap can be that the public, the patient, who need to be assured of the quality of the product they're receiving, they lose that assurance, they lose that trust. And that is not an acceptable aspect that I think which we have to think about. Our regulatory system evolved in a reaction to crisis, and layers of laws and regulations were layered on. And in that system, we have to understand the nuances. And if you want to be science-based, you have to be able to identify the imperfections in the traditional or historical practices and design your practices in a way that you can overcome those challenges. Clearly, a single company does not have the power or the time or the inclination to change the regulations or law. That is almost impossible. But you need to know what are the gaps, how do you bring a science-based approach to overcoming those gaps, and how do you convince the regulators, particularly in the CMC review process, development report, quality overall summary, how do you overcome and move away from the traditional practices which are no longer science-based to be able to propose a path forward. And that requires maturity. The consequences are significant in the sense, I think if you look at 2013 to 2017, you see this challenge. Number one, US generic drug market in chaos, Indian upstarts rise. This was 2017. Not just because of manufacturing, it was also related to marketing and other pressures, business pressures. Generic pill color changes may affect medication adherence. So the entire generic system, automatic substitution, is based on the idea of therapeutic equivalence, which is of four parts: pharmaceutical equivalence, bioequivalence when necessary, GMP, and label. Label is exactly the same as that. So GMP is not an afterthought. It has to be a forethought, so that which the process validation 2011 guidance actually brings forward. And the whole notion of pharmaceutical equivalent can be different in color is a practical reality, because FDA Hatch-Waxman law came years, decade, almost century after the Trade Secret and IP Protection Act. So we could not insist the drug product should have the same color. But FDA did issue a guideline to pay attention to size and shape. But in this particular case, I think you have several clinical studies, meta-studies done, which shows that automatic substitution to a generic of a different color actually can have a detrimental effect on adherence rate, which is which defeats the purpose. Clearly, fed up with drug companies, hospitals decide to start their own. Suffocating silence prevented us from questioning the rot in the system. This is Dinesh Thakur's write-up. And although FDA is promoting continuous manufacturing and saying that it has a strong impact on quality, that is part of the solution. That's not the entire solution. Where would most generics company be able to do this? Clearly, the brands are moving forward in that direction, but then that creates much more of a challenge, because the brands at some point in US, because of direct-to-consumer advertising, I suspect they would be advertising, oh, we make continuously manufactured, we are superior quality. What will happen then? I think we will further erode the assurance of quality and therapeutic equivalence that we need to maintain in the marketplace in the real world. And clearly, FDA has moved to increase generic competition because that's the political pressure. So all of these things together put a lot of pressure and demand maturity of a system that can address these multifaceted and multifactorial aspect of quality management. And I think this is an important part of maturity of a quality management system. So towards the end of 2019, looking at all the challenges, I proposed that the way forward, overcoming legacy challenges to advance and manufacturing with real-time and remote controls and of corporate and regulatory applications of real-time controls, I think requires us to think about chaos as a system. And chaos to continual improvement is the path to not only harmonizing Q12 and Q13, but also I think that's the path forward to thinking about maturity of quality management system. So in that sense, what I propose is, what is chaos? Chaos is a system which is unpredictable beyond an average. It is unpredictable because it exhibits extreme sensitivity to initial or starting conditions. What are the starting conditions for pharmaceuticals, especially solid dose manufacturing? It is the raw materials. It is the suppliers of the raw materials. It is the reference products that we purchase from compendia. It is the calibrated tablet. All of these are starting conditions, and including people, we are starting conditions in this case. So why is it extremely sensitive to starting conditions, especially solid dose manufacturing? Because our certificate of analysis has historically come up to focus on purity and impurity, which is necessary, but not sufficient. We lack precise control needed for certain more complex dosage forms, such as modified release dosage forms of the physical attributes or functional attributes, and we make purchasing decisions irrespective of that, and just go with certificate of analysis, which may not provide you the level of control needed for the physical attributes for processing dosage form manufacturing, which is a physical process. So in that context, I think in chaotic systems, we have to think about it's not predictable, so you don't have ability to assess risk, and you don't have knowledge about the critical attributes such as physical attributes. So you have to think about uncertainty management and expectation management. Those are the enablers of a pharmaceutical quality management system, which is in parallel to PQS enablers, which ICH Q10 identifies as knowledge management and quality risk management. The PQS elements in ICH Q10 are process performance, product quality monitoring system, corrective action, preventive action, change management, and management review. I think change management, corrective action, preventive action, and review are also enablers of professional development. So think about professional development as annual product review, annual performance review. Do you reflect back is what habits did you need to change? What practices did you need to change to improve yourself and to not make the same mistakes again? So in a sense, we can use ICH-Q10, a model of PQS, as a personalized model for management and personal responsibility, and use that as a basis for promoting, supporting our corrective action, preventive actions as individuals, as part of the system. But also, I think once we reach a state of control, we can utilize this for continual professional development. Now, I have been working on this as a practical solution for a company in India with collaboration with Muddabhai and others, and I think Muddabhai will also give you some idea about that. And so this is not just theory. This can happen in practice. So, so looking forward, in and beyond the COVID-19 emergency and chaos, how do we assure quality of pharmaceuticals? I think is the key. Now, recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Deputy Center Director for CDER, Center for Drugs, made a presentation at PDA, which he called for not only incentivizing quality, that means FDA is looking towards finding a way to recognize that these companies have a good mature quality system, these do not. Much research has been ongoing for last several years on that, and the metrics, not just the quality metrics that FDA issued some time ago, a more sophisticated layer of measuring maturity is going to come out soon, so that FDA can tailor and their resources on high risk and give relief and recognize the more mature system. So this can have a very significant impact in the marketplace, especially in and beyond COVID-19. And what was presented was GMP is a step, getting to ICH Q10 is step 2, and getting to maturity is step 3. In the next 6 to 8 months, you will see a lot of attention discussion on what does maturity mean. And I present to you that a maturity of a socio-technical system is in maturity of the society and technology. Society here is society, the professional societies that we are members of, and it is our own maturity. Be the change, as Gandhiji had said, to change a ecological system that we work and live in, we have to change ourselves. Now, pharmaceutical quality management system is not an engineered system, it's a socio-technical system. Remember that. So, given that I've been at this for a long time, I have done a lot of training of culture of pharmaceutical quality in several Indian companies. And I had an opportunity to travel to remote places in India, to interact, to have lunch, meet with people, spend time with the frontline analysts as well as operators, and to get to know their challenges, get to know what their struggles are. So to help, to give back, to help mentor, to help improve the system, I started making contemporaneous notes of my experience, and I posted those on LinkedIn, starting with the note I wrote Schrodinger's cat and my journey from 2015 to 2020, which I posted on LinkedIn on 23rd of December 2014. It is still there. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you will see all of my posts starting from this and somewhat before this and to the present 2020. I had the opportunity and privilege to provide the initial vision statement, which now has been more worked on, and more nuanced statement is there by Dr. Woodcock. When I had to provide a vision statement to the FDA PAT subcommittee meeting, advisory committee for pharmaceutical science subcommittee meeting on 28th of November 2001, this is what I came up with. Vision 2020, I can see clearly now. Quality and performance by design, continuous real-time monitoring of quality, specification based on mechanistic understanding of how formulation and process factors impact product performance, high efficiency and capacity utilization, real-time review and inspection from anywhere FDA is. So beauty, quality is in the eye of beholder. So I think a very simple aspect of quality is we tend to focus on material attributes, meeting specifications is the only thing. But remember, under the US GMP, adulteration means not doing what you said you would do is adulteration, even though your product may not have a contaminant or adulterant by testing, because you don't test what can go wrong. You test what you already know you'll see. So I think the recent debacles, metformin, Zantac, and others of recalls of impurity, carcinogenic impurities, should tell us that testing to document quality is a part of the system, but in and itself cannot assure quality. Quality assurance means doing what you say you would do, complying with the SOPs you have written, and adhering to the GMP regulations. So that's where I think we have to go in terms of maturity. But the key to professional development, education, training are clearly necessary. But without experience, you don't get to professional development. 21 CFR 211.25 lists all three, education, training, or experience, it says. But I think it should say education, training, and experience is necessary for working in a GMP environment. Now, experience is not age. Age does not provide experience. Experience is knowing your emotions, tracking, monitoring your emotions, and leveraging your emotions to be able to convert information to knowledge. After 9/11, I had an opportunity to spend a lot of time thinking about sense making, meaning making, and sense making as a tool, especially in very uncertain areas. So if I think about this, if I start with intent command, I want to do something. I have a planning process, I have directives, I have to synchronize it across the teams and organization, and then we can execute, take actions. And so when we take actions, we are taking actions in the physical domain. You have objects and events, which then generate data, which is an information domain. So you have data representation, information, data in context, and then you get to situation awareness, which is now in our mind. And unless we have that shared understanding of situation awareness among people within an organization, but also between industry and FDA, you can miss out on doing the right thing, because when you have a mental model and when you leverage your prior knowledge, you may not be leveraging the correct prior knowledge. And you may not have the deep understanding you're needing, and your sense making would be wrong, and your judgment would be wrong. And herein, emotions, beliefs, and perceptions are key. And as scientists, engineers, and so forth, our education and training often has not provided us the tools and basis to integrate our emotions. We grow up, some of us become leaders, some of don't. But that is highly variable. Development is highly variable within the sector. And I think to experience is to feel. unless we bring emotions, beliefs, and perception and leverage those to convert information to knowledge and to have a deeper understanding, to make the right sense, to have a common sense, then the system doesn't work. So if I just take an example, I'm sure you can't read this, but these are Title 21 of GMPs. So chapter I of the product GMPs. So you can see subpart A to subpart K. These are all parts of a system. And one cannot look at each of these subparts and each of those citations as on a standalone basis. You have to take a systems approach to this. So when I look at the 219 drug GMP observations, I can see a spiral of I think 21 CFR 211.25 is the 20th ranking citation, which is education, training, and experience, and 211.19 is ineffective investigations, and 211.22 essentially is not having the right documentation. So these things repeat year after year after year. And to take a systems approach, we often answer each citation separately. No, we have to think about a systems approach to root cause investigations. And here I have taken, just as an illustrative example, subpart A, subpart G for mislabeling issue that led to product recalls. But in this Swiss cheese model by James Reason and integrating that with the 5 whys of root cause quote unquote investigations, I think you have to spread your 5 whys across the system. I could simply base in a systems way of thinking, you never blame the analyst or an operator. You take the responsibility if you're a supervisor, if you're a director, if you're a vice president, president, or even a board member. So this can apply in that context too. So one case example that I have extensively thought about and I also published was the case of Amgen, because Amgen had the same challenge of not getting to effective system-wide corrective actions and getting warning letters, and so many years ago. This was 2004 and so forth. And with the PAT and the 21st Century Initiative, that provided them the motivation to say, well, we have to do the correction ourselves. We can't wait for FDA inspection to tell us that we have to correct and prevent our errors. So if I don't look, there is no problem was their old mindset. And then they took on a leadership role to prevent errors. So the senior management adopted a prevention of error mindset, which is a higher order of consciousness, and helped all the people within the organization to know science-based approach to investigation and so forth. Now, these 3 stages, third order of consciousness, fourth order of consciousness, fifth order of consciousness, are stages in adult human development according to the constructive development theory. Constructive means we are the makers of our own meaning. And this is the work of Professor Keegan at Harvard, and also the concept of immunity to change that he has. Humans don't change much because we get habituated and we are comfortable with our habits, even if the habit is bad, like smoking or not losing weight and so forth. So to overcome the immunity to change, we have to overcome the change prevention system, and you have to master your feeling system. And then you need to how to change. So you need to have the knowing system. So these are change prevention, feeling, and knowing systems are essential part of professional development or adult human development. So so in that sense, my thoughts are to help you think about error classification system, errors of commission, doing what should not have been done, errors of omission, not doing what should have been done, and our confusion between common cause and special cause. Dr. Deming noted that most variations are common cause variations, not due to special cause. Taking action based on belief that a common cause is special cause is tampering the system. It does more harm. So confusion about market standards with batch release test. I mean, this is so ingrained. This is what we have been doing for many years. How do we change that is the question. It's not that difficult, actually. What else is common? What else is common are the reference standards. What is the quality of the reference standards? What's the quality of the test equipment? Do you have the right standards for calibration, reproducibility, repeatability? Errors of omission is not accounting for what is common and not taking a product life cycle approach to quality by design, process validation, continuous process verification, then out of specification investigation, corrective action, and achieving a state of statistical process control or suitability and capability. Only a process that is suitable and capable then can begin continuous improvement. Special cause is univariate cause unknown. Blaming the human error is often errors of commission. Not taking a multivariate systems approach, systems 5 Ys is the thing. I think all the information you need is available to us. Update and emphasis on 21 CFR to 11.25. This citation in GMP can potentially be very more useful. Unfortunately, we have not defined what is adequate education, training, and experience. And I'm not asking for FDA to define that. I'm simply asking the companies to take that responsibility on their own through their HR onboarding and so forth. Remember ASTM E2709, ASTM E228, which are part of the process validation 2011. And remember, we have struggled for years to harmonize pharmacopoeias across the regions, the US, Europe, and Japan, and all the pharmacopoeias are in different locations. I think we will need some work on that. And clearly, ConOps and One Quality Voice have progressed at FDA, but I think harmonization of pharmacopoeias and the meaning of market standard and so forth need clarity, particularly in the US. I think things are very different in Europe and Japan. So I think there needs to be some concerted effort to address this gap. Now, I have purposely left some of the connectors of my culture of quality as 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, and 3 as Roman. And but here is the culture of quality. You really need across the corporation one quality voice of internal and external validation. And similarly, I think vision, mission, policies, and incentives of a corporation should yield one corporate voice where leadership, message, credibility, involvement, and empowerment is throughout the corporation. And so when you onboard new people in, so they may not be good practitioners, but the quality, culture of quality, culture of pharmaceutical quality enabler 1, 2, 3 is to make quality normal, easy, and rewarding. And a PQS enablers are essentially theory of knowledge or epistemology. You have theory, knowledge of variation, psychology of change, and appreciation of a system. Those are from Dr. Deming. And GXP enablers then are to become good practitioners is eliminate fear, increase awareness of what a system is, and mastery of your technical experts. So to achieve a culture of pharmaceutical quality in a whole space of corporate environment, I think remove fear, increase awareness, and about all the other aspects that we've been talking about, and mastery of your technical and other expertise. And knowledge of theory of knowledge, epistemology, how do you know what you know? Knowledge of variation, appreciation of a system, and psychology of change, which I'm using the constructive development theory of Professor Keegan of order of consciousness, third order being socialized mind, fourth order being self-authored. So self-authorship, can you not write or have everyone who is in a job to write their own SOPs that they are responsible for? Perhaps not initially, but after a year, so you need to improve an SOP, don't hire a consultant. You should self-author SOPs, because having self-authored your policies and procedures, you can comply with that. Complying becomes boring and difficult if you have to comply with an SOP that somebody else has written. So I think this is an aspect of culture of quality that I want you to think about. And remember, emergence is a characteristic of a complex systems. Patterns emerge due to multiple interactions between agents and by incidents. premature convergence on a plan happens. The three assumptions that we make mistake of making is that humans have rational choice. They have intentional capability, and the order will remain, which is not true. And I think the pandemic and lockdowns is a stark reminder that we are struggling with systems orientation and effective systems, not just in corporate, but across the nations. At the highest levels of the nations, we have this challenge right now. So remember, chaos is not disorder. It is a system, extreme sensitivity to initial condition. It is unpredictable in a pattern formed by strange attractors. The strange attractors are strange because they are subjective. And here the strange attractors are essentially come out to be what makes us good, our intentions and our observations. Are we our blind spot? Can we observe? Do we have the awareness to observe what need to be observed? And do we have the right intentions? State of a system remains on that tractor, where not known exactly, because in a population we don't know that. But so I think this is something I want you to think about. Chaos is a system, extreme sensitivity to initial conditions, and you can look at our own system to appreciate that. Chaos and emergencies, new realities, laws, order, and practices are evolving very quickly. Crumbling global supply chain, Pharma 4.0, and reshoring. The question is, do we reform or transform? Reforming the old system is no longer a possibility. We are in the process of transforming to a new system now. US regulatory schema in Indian pharma. Remember, this is a transaction. This is a business. This is not friendship here necessarily. Collaboration and competition go hand in hand. So there are no ifs and or buts. Competition will drive the thing. Challenging opportunities, how uncertainty and expectations are managed, is the need of the hour. Perpetual emergencies and chaos, lest we forget the lessons in a bottle of snake oil, which swallows, among other bottles, bottle of lies. Think about that. I think this is what maturity relates to in professionals, adults, and even systems. Thank you for listening.